Y'all, what's your favorite bucket list place? Where are you gonna go?
Bora Bora.
Mine
Ooh,
too.
nice.
Mine too. Good morning, all. I'm just doing a quick introduction of Mikkel Schneider. He is the founder and chief executive officer of Nightingale Education Group, a mission-driven organization focused on innovative nursing workforce development across its entire profession continuum, from pre-licensure academic programs to graduate studies to reskilling and upskilling through continuing education. Schneider served as the first president of Nightingale College, a higher learning institution dedicated to closing equity gaps and creating geographic, socioeconomic, and demographic access to the nursing profession throughout the United States. A registered nurse for more than 27 years, Schneider has a wealth of management experience in post-secondary education for health professions and healthcare delivery services. He is a published academic author, conference speaker, and guest lecturer specializing in strategic planning, organizational development, forecasting, and management. Schneider holds a Master of Business Administration degree from the University of California at Berkeley's Haas School of Business. Mikkel Schneider.
All right, thank you, Brianne. Well, hey, everybody. Yay, all three of you here. We're coming to you live, everybody, from Wilmington, Delaware. Yay, at the crossroads of what I've learned, many states to which trains go. So I've taken a few over this past 10 days. And so thank you, those of you learners that are here. I appreciate you being here. It was Brittany, Janelle, and Melvis, right? Fantastic. We're going to have some interaction and going to talk about, the future of nursing, because the future you are. And then we have some special guests with us. There's Assistant Professor Lewis over there. Dr. McDaniel is Nursing Education Services Director. And then Stan Zuber is our partnership guru on the East Coast. So thank you. Yeah, thank you all for being here. And Brianna in the back there, she will be helping with the chat. So we're monitoring the chat, so if anything comes up, she will raise her hand, let me know about it. So we're gonna spend about 2.5 hours together or so. There will be a break, everybody, so don't fret. We're gonna go about 1 hour and 15 or so, break for a bit, and then come back and wrap it up. For the purposes of today, I would like everybody to take all of the other hats off except the nursing hat, the nursing perspective, the nursing framing, right? So anything that you might have heard from pundits on TV, yay TV, I blame it for everything, not today, not today. Anything that actually you read online, on whatever social media you subscribe to. Not today. No, absolutely not. Just newsflash for everybody. Not everything that you see online is actually true. So what we need to be doing today is looking at things through a perspective of nursing and also using evidence. That is, and again, evidence, where does evidence come from? How do we know? Research, yeah, and where is that published normally? TV magazines, not so much research, no. Like a lot of opinion happens on TV. Journals, right, so peer-reviewed journals, right? That's how we know actually the data that is being presented or the conclusions that are being presented are real and not, somebody's opinion as of this morning, which will probably change by tonight, depending on which way the wind blows. So yeah, look, we live in absolutely extraordinary times, right? Probably noticed yesterday, I think that has never happened in U.S. government in all of its history. Yeah, it happened. So, I'm puzzled as to, what's next and how do we solve these big systemic issues, all of the polarization that we have, and so forth. And look, we're not here to solve it all, right? We're here to try to figure out what it is that nurses can do to help solving the big systemic issues that we have. So there's some slides on there. You guys are having slides there in cyberspace. So again, throw your things into the chat. Again, if there's something extremely interesting, then Brian will pause and we'll go from there. So I wanted to start with the general kind of question, why do we talk about it at all? Like, why do we talk about it, the future of this profession, the future of healthcare? Why should we? Well, you guys are the future, right? Everybody who's there. You may be in nursing already as a practical nurse. You may already have your bachelor's, pursuing a master's. Yay, kudos for you. But yeah, you are the future. I'm sort of like getting into the golden years of practice, and so but still trying to keep up with the future. However, for you all, this is going to be your career, your life, the system that you're a part of, the system that you either perpetuate forward in the way that it is, or you try to change it for the better, hopefully, right? So the reason we are having these broadcasts 3 times a year, and I go around the country and meet with learners across this nation. We have an overall enrollment Nightingale College does in 48 states. About 30 states with some almost 600 learners are represented on today's broadcast. So yay, everybody, wherever you're dialing in from, unless it's on the East Coast, good morning to you. Everybody else in here, good afternoon. I'm going to pause, ask, so far so good? Any questions? Anything like that? We are the future. Let's solve the future. We can't really solve the future without figuring out, the baseline, so to speak, right? To be really, really aware of what is, happening now, and what are the outcomes now, and what should we be focusing on then in order to create that better future. As a matter of fact, there's a lot has been done over the past couple of decades, a lot of research on trying to determine what this future should be and how nursing should be affecting it. So any of you heard of the National Academy of Medicine, formerly known as the Institute of Medicine, but now it's called National Academy of Medicine. Now, it is not just for medicine. I just recently learned, actually, last week, from the director of the National Academy of Medicine that the reason that name was chosen and not National Academy of Healthcare is not to confuse the name with the National Institute of Healthcare, which is NIH. And they thought, if we're going to have an NAH and NIH, people are just going to be confusing it. So NAM is not just for medicine, it's the National Academy for the entire healthcare, and they do a lot of research on it. In 2021, they published the second report on the future of nursing. So the first one was published in 2010, COVID, and it was supposed to come out, the second one in 2020. COVID, threw a wrench into those plans, but they did publish it in 2021. And here, the basic conclusions of this study is that And so the entire study is published, Unleashing the Power of the Nurse to Achieve Health Equity. So the number one says, we will never thrive as a country unless we all have what we need to live a healthy life, no matter who we are or where we live. Yeah, everybody good with that? Okay. I'm going to pause on that and ask you this. Who should be excluded from that? Like, I mean, you know, who should we exclude? Should we exclude somebody? Because certainly not everybody is deserving. Everybody. Okay, all right. Whew. Okay, I'm glad as the nurses, you're agreeing that, you know, everybody is, by definition, if you are a human being living in this nation, or, I mean, for anywhere in the world, for that matter, we just can't, you know, let's fix this first, our nation, then we'll start, you know, Mikhail for World Congress campaign to fix the rest of it. However, again, yes, this is everybody. Now, I want to, before we go into 2 and 3, I want to talk about health equity. What is equity? What does it mean? Is equity different from equality? How is it different? What is equality? Let's start with that, because that one is simpler. Same for everybody. Like, equality means everybody gets the same. Fantastic, right? Now, what is equity then? It has to do with everything. It has to do with finance. It has to do with rights. It has to do with many, many things. But health equity, rather than health equality, right? The what? True, perhaps there are some benefits in it, but at the core of it, what is equity? If equality is every single body, right, gets the same, right? And we already said everybody should be included and getting some, right? So then what is equity?
So I think equity would be like a proportionate, like you get what you're equal, like what you get is what you are equal to get.
Okay, so we may be getting there, right? So Melvis is saying it's some kind of proportionate to something, right? So it really is you as an individual get access to what you need to achieve the same outcomes anybody else can achieve, right? Does that make sense? So we don't look at the inputs, because equality, it's all about inputs, right? It's about what you get. Whereas equity is about the outcome, right? No matter what inputs go into place, that the outcome can be comparable, right? How are we doing with health equity in this nation? Are the outcomes comparable? From one person to another person, from one population to another population, from one community to another community, from one state to another state? No, absolutely not. The outcomes do depend today on where you live, what you look like, what you sound like, what kind of geographic community, like what's within your geographic community and what you have access to, your level of income. I mean, there's all sorts of things that are that go into play to create this system of inequity that we have built over many, many years, right? So the trick here, and what the report says, though, until every single one of us, every single person who lives in this nation, lives in the world, every single human being, essentially. And again, this report only concerns the United States, and we're going to talk today only about the United States, but this doesn't not ring true for the rest of the world, right? For humanity itself, for human beings everywhere. So all of us, by definition, have to have access to what we need in order to live our healthiest lives, right? So this is what it's saying. Number 2, it says, nurses are catalysts for this change. They're trusted bridge builders who collaborate with people, communities, and organizations to promote good health and well-being, no matter one's background. How do we feel about that? Nurses are the trusted bridge builders. I mean, we are. Look, it is still poll after poll after poll, year after year after year, puts nursing as the most trusted profession in this nation, right? There is a lot to trust. However, are we as individual contributors, as nurses, doing everything that it is we can to bring that about, to bring that health equity about? I can tell you this conversation, as far as I know, doesn't happen in any other school of nursing. And again, there's many schools, so I don't know all of them, right? But I can almost guarantee you, if there are others, there are only very, very few. So we don't even educate nurses, right? It's all about sticking tubes into orifices. You know, it's very exciting. I get it. You know, yay, Grey's Anatomy, and all of the other TV shows. That's like, yay, ooh, look how, you know, and then I'll meet a doctor. Hopefully that's not your reasoning for, you know, I never met a doctor and I'm okay. As a nurse, right? But it's not about, it's being a nurse. It is not about performing a skill, right? Having skill, you know, having skills in order to be able to do what it is you have to do in order to deliver the high quality care absolutely is important. Absolutely is important. What's even more important is having enough reasoning, right? Reasoning, clinical sort of judgment, connecting the dots all together in your head to be able to deliver that for that client, the best quality care that you can. But what we continually forget is that other layer, even higher layer, is that without us, nurses, which how many nurses are in the United States? Anybody knows? Take a wild guess. Oh, million. Yeah, no. North. Higher. Should we? Yeah, Stan is like 4 million. You're right. Over 4 million nurses in the United States. Counted. Yeah? Not all of them practicing. About 85% or so of them actually practicing with their license. However, 4+ million. Now, newsflash, it amounts to more than 1% of the entire US population. More than 1% of the entire US population are nurses. And yet, have we done a good job minding health equity and driving it forward and doing all of that? Nope, not to date. Absolutely not. So again, the hope of today is that you start to better understand the outcomes that exist today, the baseline. And then we have a conversation into kind of dig into the root causes of why these outcomes are the way they are. And then my hope is that all of you, right, for the remainder of your education at Nightingale and for the remainder of your career and continuing education and whatever else you do, that you always remember this, that at the end of the day, it is our responsibility to change this system. It is our responsibility to bring better outcomes, health outcomes to our communities. Our responsibility. Should we wait for the government? Yeah, we'll be waiting for a very, very long time. First, the House has to figure out who the next speaker is. And then, I don't know what they do after that, right? They probably will remove that one as fast as the, you know, this, who knows? It is truly, the dysfunction of the government now in this country is such that us relying on the government to actually put forward policy that will address that, oof, no. Until nurses are the government. Yeah, hey, do you know how many nurses are actually in the government? In Congress? That many. None. You know how many nurses are actually in the high-level positions in the government departments, you know, in the executive branch? There's one. Yeah, plenty of everybody else. Just not nurses. Yeah, well, because we're kind of like, we're all about patients. It is all about that, and it is important. We just can't not forget about that other thing, right? Okay, so number three. For our country to advance health equity for all, the systems that educate, pay, employ, and enable nurses need to permanently remove practice barriers, value their contributions, prepare them to understand and tackle the social factors that affect health, and diversify the profession. Yeah? Why is that last one there? Diversify the profession. Why should we? What does the profession look like now? Anybody know? Yeah, Professor Lewis there, Holly says, it kind of looks like me. Yeah, white female, and whoa, more power to white females, right? It's great that we have them. We just need like more of everybody else in the profession. Why? The what? Outcomes. Yeah, Dr. McDaniel says it has to do with outcomes. Why do you think the diversification of the profession will lead to better outcomes for the populations that are being served?
Because there's going to be a better understanding of the different races.
Yes, better understanding of the sort of the fabric of that individual, right? Which has to do with culture, which has to do with many different inputs, right? Has to do with I mean, like, if somebody who has never lived in poverty, for example, it is very difficult for them to intellectually understand what it feels like and how to navigate that. So imagine the profession diversifying in that and socioeconomic way as well, right? That people from lower incomes are actually allowed into the profession and they succeed and they get their license and then they start working with the populations that they have to serve. It's great for them as well because guess what? Nursing is one of the best socioeconomic mobility vehicles that this country has, right? And yet, we're yet to figure out, unless you're Nightingale, how to do this. And Nightingale, not Florence, you know, because Florence had her flaws in that respect. But the Nightingale Education Group and Nightingale College specifically, we're figuring out how to do it. As a matter of fact, here's how this guy, another step in changing the system. So my colleague and I, with the help of many collaborators at Nightingale, so my colleague Julie Coldy, Dr. Julie Coldy, who is the president of Nightingale Innovations, and I presenting a poster at the American Academy of Nursing on Friday this week. Yay! You know, I'm going back to DC. And that presentation, the poster is titled Structural Racism in Nursing Education and Accreditation. We're showing the world and this country of how structural racism has been built into the educational process that we have. And this is just the beginning of the conversation, but this is the type of thing that I'm talking about that all 4 million of us have to be doing in order to start changing the outcomes. By the way, everybody on the broadcast, after we have presented on Friday, we will share that poster with you, with everybody. And you will be able to cite it with proper citations, of course, APA format, and you know the drill, moving forward, right? And we're hoping that others will as well. And also, we're in the process of developing a series of articles for journals, for peer-reviewed journals, on these topics and how education must change in order then to get downstream to better health and better wellness for everybody. So, whoo! It's a big job, everybody. Like, anybody wants to quit yet? No, Melvis? Okay. It's like, Janelle, everything. No, not quitting just yet. Okay, good, good. So we'll, you know. It is going to be a challenge. It absolutely is a challenge. It is like we are so, the system, the healthcare system itself is so dysfunctional. It produces miserable outcomes for the amount of money that it costs. And yet again, we haven't found, we know what those solutions are, actually, have known for a very, very long time. And yet we don't have the will as nurses, or enough drive, or enough organization, or whatever it may be, to actually drive that systemic change forward. So again, for today, learn and then see how you can use this information in order to become part of the solution. Yeah, and go beyond what we all think our civic duty is, showing up at a ballot box every couple of years. You know, I mean, standing in line for probably 15 hours if you're in Georgia. Not great. And then we forget about it. And it's like, well, I voted. Is that enough? It's like going to the, I mean, it's an important part of it. But no system and no democracy is going to work unless actual people get involved in actual systems and driving the change in those systems. Everybody with me? Yeah. So if you want to see a change, guess what? Be it and then get involved. All right. Well, why is health important? Tell me. Why are we so hung up on health?
How we function.
It's how we function, right. So like it's sort of a basic human need, right? Again, and I'll go back and remind everybody, if you think that basic need doesn't apply to somebody who is human, not the profession for you. I'm just like, newsflash. It's like, if you want to walk around and be like, kind of partial Oprah, right? You get it, and you get it, but you don't. But you get it, but you don't. And all of this, not for you. Not for you. If you want to pass your personal judgment on somebody else, not for you. Yeah? If somebody else's rights you don't think are as important as yours, not for you. By definition, right? Not me saying that. National Academies of Medicine saying that. In not so many colorful words, in a very dry language. So yeah, it is a basic human need. We cannot flourish without being well. Let's talk just a little bit more into the wellness itself. What does wellness look like? You're looking at me and going like, probably that, as in, You're right. You're absolutely right. This is what wellness looks like. Let's talk about the dimensions of it. What's in it? Right. So there is what you eat, right? Nutritional, which contributes to what other types of wellness, right? If you're nutritionally sound, what does it contribute to in the wellness realm? Well, look, I'm walking upright. I'm moving. Physical, yeah. Physical. So physical is an important first piece. And then somehow, even if we get that, we forget about everything else that has to be part of it. So physical is important. What else? Actually, good nutrition contributes to something else. Other type of wellness. Yes, mental wellness, emotional wellness, right? You are what you eat. Exactly. And how well you feel is connected to that, right? So you know how the poster says social factors? Nutrition is a social factor, right? And people in lower incomes do not have access to good nutrition. And then what happens? Their health declines. They're not as well physically, mentally, emotionally. Because what they can afford doesn't provide them with everything that they need in order to flourish. Good? All right. Okay, other types of wellness. You mentioned it before already. Mental health, yes, absolutely important. Somebody the other day told me, they were like, it's 2023. All of us have like mental issues. I mean, I kind of tend to agree, right? Because, I mean, just turn on the TV and then you will know that like collectively we're not doing that great. And yet again, this sort of mental and emotional health is completely disregarded, right, in our systems, right? We think social media is social wellness. It's the opposite of social wellness. Social wellness is one of those. We are, right before this broadcast, I was like, yay, 3 people showed up out of like a couple of dozen that registered. Good for you. This, the 3D, the human interaction, the social component of it, that's what contributes to us, being well as human beings. Sitting in front of our screens all the time and doing this, not social wellness. Screens will never replace this that happens in person. The magic and some, like things that sort of molecular exchange that happens like somewhere in the proximity with other human beings. Which is pretty cool. Anyway, so hey, those of you who didn't make it today after you signed up, better luck next time. We're exercising our social wellness right here. So yay. Okay, other wellness. Financial, Melvis, absolutely financial. How many people are financially well, do you think, in the United States? Not many. Oh my word. If you're Mikhail, good for you. Yay, you made it. By the way, just to tell you about me just a little bit, this is not in my intro, is that I came to this country at the age of 19 as a refugee, not speaking a word of English. Yeah.
You made it.
I made it, being a white female helped. Yeah. I mean female. I'm just like, what am I talking about? A white male. I'm like, here you go, everybody. We will dissect that one a little later. Oops. And did I mention a touch of dyslexia? Yeah. There you go. So yeah, I mean, good for me. But the systems already were set up, right, in this nation to sort of help me along the way, right? It wasn't all just, me and my effort and all of this. However, okay, good for me, right? Yeah, there are very, very few comparatively people like me on the financial wellness side in this nation. Should we have more people that are financially well? Sure. Should we exclude anybody? Probably not. Again, it's like you can't yank one piece of it out of the equation and then think that the rest will catch up, because when somebody is financially unwell, guess what other unwellness it leads to? Emotional, mental, physical, all of that, right? So all of these things are interconnected together. And we have to start thinking about both the systems and the individuals as the interconnected, you know, an individual is an interconnected system, right, of wellness. And all of the inputs, everything that they may need in order, again, for the system to flourish. So it is a very, very complex thing, and health, that's what we call health, is important, right, on an individual level. Health is also important on the economic level, right? Healthier people are more effective. They're more productive. They contribute more to their communities, right? To their society, to their, you know, their work, their job, whatever they're doing. If you're feeling well all together, emotionally, mentally, physically, right? You show up and then you're at your best. And so your economic output becomes higher, which is really important in the macroeconomic system, in the nation, or in the state, or in the community, right? So the healthier the people are, the better the community does. And it's, you know, it can be a vicious cycle the opposite way, but it certainly can be a kind of perpetuating cycle of flourishment that happens when that gets going in the communities. So think about that. So it's not just important for individuals. It is important for society at large, that everybody would be well, right? And yet again, many in the government, many otherwise, certainly the talking heads on TV, somehow determine that, yeah, no, not everybody, just part of the people. Well, what they are not really truly processing is back to the National Academy of Medicine statement. Until all of us. That's the point. When all of us have it, then the system itself, it functions in its entirety at its utmost best flourishing capacity and perpetuates that forward over and over and over again, generation after generation after generation. Right? Wow. Didn't think it would be like a, you know, lesson on civics. But here you are, yay. Okay, so I'll pause and ask Brienne anything interesting in the chat. And anybody quitting?
Nobody's quitting.
Oh, that's good, that's good. Yes.
There was a question about which country you immigrated from.
Well, I came from which to this day remains the only authoritarian regime in Europe. The country is called Belarus. And I am a kind of I have a multi-ethnic background, which was frowned upon in no uncertain terms there, both by the government and the people who live there. And I was horribly bullied as a kid, and you know, just because of my last name and all that. So yeah, escaping there was kind of the way, without anything, was the way out. And I wanted a better life, and I found it here. And many people from across the globe look at the United States as that sort of beacon of hope, and sometimes last beacon of hope. And so think about that when, you know, if this poor refugee from Belarus wasn't allowed to come here and try, guess what? None of this would be happening. Yay, things are interconnected. So yay, you know, next time you have a conversation around immigration, or around whether, you know, people who come here to this country seeking better life are actually good for this country, you have one anecdotal example to lean on. All right, and there's obviously many, many more. Okay, so let's actually dig in. I promised you the baseline, right? So we're going to talk about the baseline, where we are outcomes-wise. Should we restate the general, how we're generally doing in health care in the United States? How are we doing? Generally not great, no. As a matter of fact, that is comparative performance of the developed world's healthcare systems. You know, it's like everybody, 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 everybody. Boom! Us. Yeah, winning indeed, just not in the right way. Yeah, so, and this is from the Commonwealth Fund. They do these comparative studies. By the way, the Commonwealth Fund, one of the really great sources of information on healthcare. They do studies across the globe. They do studies across the nation. They do studies down to county levels and so forth. And they produce a lot of data that actually is a verified research data that you can rely on in order to, you know, when you talk about healthcare. But yes, yes. Wow. Precipitous. It's not just, it's not just like a little lower, but boom, almost off the chart. And that line kind of in the middle, 10 country average, right? So we're so far below average in performance of our healthcare system that we have a lot of work to do. This is how much we spend. See how everybody clustered together? And then that's us up there. So we spend the most to get the worst outcomes of anybody else. Well, not anybody else. It's really Western developed world. You know, many countries in Western Europe, Australia, Canada, New Zealand. Sometimes South Korea and Japan make, you know, depending on the availability of data, make it to the list. Yeah, we always spend the most. And this is percent of gross domestic product, meaning the entire economy. So think of everything, all the milk, all the Teslas, whatever else we produce in this country, education, stuff like that. Almost 20% of it is healthcare, spent on healthcare. And the rate of growth in our spending is absolutely unsustainable year after year after year. Economists actually predict that if nothing will change in this system within about 80 years from now, so pretty much toward the end of this century, we will be spending the vast majority. Our economy is going to be nothing but sick care. That is scary. So something needs to be done now in order to change, to bend that unsustainable trajectory, both in spending and the outcomes. Healthcare spending per capita, meaning per counted head in the population. Have we counted everybody in this country? No, the answer is no, we haven't. All right. So, but we spend that much more than anybody else. You know, Switzerland, they're, you know, kind of the second highest. Switzerland, if you haven't noticed on the other chart, gets way better outcomes than we do for the money that they spend on healthcare. New Zealand, by the way, less than half of what we spend. Guess what? The outcomes are very high as well in that country. So, healthcare performance compared to spending. Everybody. You see how I mentioned New Zealand is up there around the 10 country average. Switzerland is hovering there. That's us. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Winning. Yay. Affordability. I just, you know, there's no commentary. Equity. Cost-related access problem. We're over there. Now, notice too that even higher income people have access issues in our system, let alone lower. That number is 50%. 50% of lower income population reports access problems. How we doing? Health for all? Not so much. Avoidable deaths. Winning. Life expectancy at birth. We're the lowest one, just in case you were wondering. All that money. Wasted. Yes, wasted. 4 million nurses. That's still the outcome. We have more nurses per capita than anybody else in the world. We have more than one nurse to every 100 people that live in this nation. You have more friends than that on your, whatever, gram, or the artist formerly known as Twitter. X, I guess. His name is X now. Yeah, I don't know. My people tell me I should be on it. I was like, I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, life expectancy at birth. Suicides. And that number, actually this data is 2017. I can guarantee you, next time this comes out, it'll be through the roof. As a matter of fact, I'll give you one piece of statistic here. So this is from the University School of Medicine in Richmond and University of Washington in Seattle. And that says this. Firearms play a central role in the crisis. They are the leading cause of death among youths aged 1 to 19. The leading cause of death. You know, all those baby suffocations and things like firearms, homicides, and more than that, suicides. Did you know that the vast majority of firearm deaths in this country, you hear a lot, right, on the news. You hear a lot of like mass shootings, and it's horrible. It's horrible. Suicides way surpass homicides. People that die by firearm suicide is the vast majority of firearm deaths in this country annually. Suicide. Because when somebody is not emotionally well, or they're suffering a mental breakdown because perhaps they don't have financial access or nutritional or whatever it may be, or somebody tells them that no, they cannot have access to the care that they need because they're just second class. For the longest time, and I'm bringing a personal example into this as well, for the longest time, and many people around the world still believe that being of Jewish descent, Ashkenazi Jew, which is just half of my ethnic background, I somehow am subhuman. Meaning, just, sort of like kind of rat, type of thing. Don't feel pain the way normal people do. Don't have the same worth as other people. How do you think that is? It feels great? No. No. By the way, systemically, in this nation, still to this day, in medical schools and some nursing schools, people are being taught that black people have thicker skin. They don't feel the pain the way everybody else does. That's a load of nonsense, to put it lightly. Another piece of information on that for you. US maternal mortality more than tripled in the last 35 years. A decade ago, it was 16 deaths per 100,000 births. This is mother. This is mother dying either during pregnancy or during childbirth or in the first year after childbirth. Overall, in 2020, there were almost 24 deaths per 100,000 births. Among black people, there were 55 maternal deaths, more than or almost 3 times the rate of white mothers. You probably saw a really high-profile case of Serena Williams, right? Because she publicized it and went public with it, and good, that's good that she did. People, when she was telling people something is wrong, I know my body, I'm not feeling right, something is wrong, something is happening, nobody would listen to her. Right, same is true for heart attacks, same is true for many things. Because again, and also, somehow we're taught that if somebody has a different skin color, that somehow predisposes them to conditions. Not true. It's the lived experience that predisposes people to conditions. Not skin color, not anything else. Lived experience. Everybody good with that? Mm-hmm. If somebody is born into poverty, if somebody is socially isolated, their chances of acquiring type 2 diabetes way higher than otherwise. We talked about nutrition before, right? And all of this. Social isolation, that's another thing I'm bringing into your view for it. People in this country are socially isolated. And social media makes us even more socially isolated. Because all we see is some highlight reel of people's lives, and we're like, oh my word, if only, I was as. It's like, oh, look at me, look at my food, look at me, look at my food. I was like, yay. Like I ate a banana and a bagel. There's nothing to look at my food at. Right? Okay, so adults with multiple chronic conditions. Almost 1/3 of our entire adult population in this nation, almost 1/3, not one, but multiple chronic conditions. Multiple. And we don't manage it well, either. Obesity. That's a bit outdated, 40%. It's 42.7 from the latest data. Maryland is right at the average, 42.7. Pennsylvania is a little higher at 43.1. Just looked it up. So yay. This is obesity. This is like severe overweight. Now, and look, TV will tell you that, oh, it's all right. It's okay, It's okay. And it's okay. People make a choice that is absolutely great with anybody else. What though is not talked about is that people with obesity have way higher prevalence of cardiac disease, hypertension, heart disease, everybody else, diabetes, which is type 2, right? The conditions that are preventable, and multiple other joint diseases, on and on and on and on. Yes, Melvis.
I just want to ask a question.
Yeah.
Since we're on obesity, because it's something that I've been wondering about. Like, I don't know how the factors that they use to consider a person obesity in America, because sometimes I go to the hospital and I don't know if they consider race or background or all of that.
No,
Because
and
when they tell you you're obese, like you're looking at yourself like,
yeah, there are. Okay, so the measure is imprecise, right? And it depends. There's a combination. I actually just read an article of where the U.S. military is struggling with figuring out whether they should continue using the waist circumference as a determination of kind of fitness. And no, that is not a determination. Shouldn't be like it's just one sort of factor, right? And then you have to like the body fat composition, right? Because you have athletes who are, the charts will tell you they're obese, right? But they have a lot of muscle mass compared to their height. And so then what helps with them is the measurement of body fat, actually, which then approximates the amount of kind of visceral fat around your organs and things like that, right? Things that actually then affect other things. So it's imprecise, but the so you can't diagnose just based on one particular thing, right? You have to consider a sort of a combination of factors in order to diagnosis. And look, it's not. I mean, there are two, right? When we talk about heart conditions or joint conditions or anything like that, there are really two things that, on the physical side of things, that go into it. Is nutrition, right? It's access to proper nutrition. Just access to food is not it. Right? Somebody may not be hungry, and yet they can be malnourished, right? So it's access to this, and everything that is bad for us, for our physiological body, essentially, is cheap. All the processed, very, very colorful packages with foods that are not really food. I mean, they're like concoction of, I don't know how else to describe it. And so yeah, it's and anything that is sort of better for us is more expensive because it takes time to grow. It takes time to, so back to farming and all of this, right? It takes time. And it takes energy, and it takes, not chickens being piled on one on top of the other, right? But actually free roaming, and who has space for that, and all of this, and we love our meat, and it like goes on and on and on and on. So it's a complex systemic issues, right? It is not the one thing that I need you to like really, really keep in mind is that it is anything that to do with body weight and obesity, it is a medical condition. It is not, and it is not because somebody, my dad is like, oh, if they just would get off, get off. And I'm like, oh, Dad. No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Because the system that we build, that's what leads to it. It's not an individual's choice that leads to that. It's what they have access to. What do they know? How they've been brought up, culture, all of that stuff, right? And yet, when we encounter somebody, we are automatically, oh, yeah, blame them. This is not about passing judgment on somebody. It is about making sure that the systems are created that will allow them access to what they need in order to get to the best outcome that they should have. Physician visits and physician supply. Whew. That's us at the end.
Here's what I found.
Oh, thank you, Siri. She's very, like, every time very helpful. Today she just decided to discover how many physicians we got. 2.6 physicians per 1,000 of population. That's back in 2018. And our physician visits are low. Some other countries like Sweden and New Zealand, their physicians visits are low because they're generally need less care. Ours are low because we have really low supply. So this is the summary. US ranks the worst in mortality amenable to medical care, infant mortality, life expectancy, suicide rate, obesity rate, prevalence of chronic conditions. By the way, more than half of the US population has at least one chronic condition. More than half. Cost-related healthcare access problems, healthcare system efficiency, healthcare system equity. US spends the most in absolute and relative terms. $4.3 trillion in 2021. 4.3 trillion. You know how Congress argues constantly around, like, 50 million for something or whatever, and they're like, 4.3 trillion, that's a lot of zeros. It's a really fun exercise, everybody, if you have never done it. Like, write a 1 and then put like 3 zeros next to it. And you're like, oh, yay, that looks familiar, 1,000. And then you put another 3 zeros on top of that. And it's like, oh, yeah, that looks familiar, 1,000,000. And you're like, oh, yeah, if I had $1 million, ooh, wow, ooh, that would be great. And then you put another 3 zeros on top of that, and it's like, yay, 1 billion, woo, 1,000 millions. And then you add another 3 zeros on top of that, and you get to $1 trillion. And then you multiply that by 4.3, and whoa, that's a lot of numbers and zeros. It went up 2.7% from 2020. We spent almost $13,000 per capita in 2021. Almost 9% of US population, or over 30 million people, are uninsured. Talk access. It projected to reach 9.5 by 2030. About the spend in 2021 was about 18.3% of gross domestic product. And as I said, spending is significantly outpaces spending in healthcare, any other economic growth in this nation, and has been doing that for a very, very long time. When the economy contracts, guess what? Healthcare never does. There is never a recession in healthcare. Yay for us. So in this next few minutes before the break, let's talk about who pays for healthcare. That's there for you. And I was supposed to be asking people questions. I don't know if somebody putting things in the chat. And okay, yes.
The first one from Levestein. How has the nursing responsibility gotten better over the years, or have you not seen anything?
So the question is how so nursing responsibility in terms of, I'm assuming I'm interpreting this, are we becoming any better as a profession in driving any kind of systemic change? And the answer is not that I have noticed. There are some efforts here and there by groups, by associations, by things like that, but these efforts are still very kind of disconnected from each other. We can't agree as a profession yet on things like, and again, when you get this poster, you will see that one of the major factors that contributes to continued non-diversification of the nursing profession is the requirement for schools to hit a certain % of their graduates passing NCLEX, or the licensing exam, on the first attempt. And then public policy deems programs that cannot get those numbers as doing a bad job. And guess what? Programs adopt. And they only admit people who actually are good test takers. But that means you have to have been from a higher income, have gone to a secondary school that taught you how to take a test really, really well, and on and on and on, right? And so it constantly affects, and plus there's a practice of washout, so many schools in this country do not let people graduate based on predictor testing. And so it's horrible, but that's what we've built. And the vast majority of this profession believes that that's a good thing. That keeping first-time NCLEX pass rate policies is a good thing. It has not a shred of evidence behind it. No evidence exists to suggest that it's a quality measure. No evidence exists, evidence to the opposite exists, that says people who pass on subsequent attempts are no less of a nurse, they're no less safe, there's nothing less about them than people who pass on the first attempt. Want to know a secret? This guy didn't pass NCLEX on the first attempt. Wow, my school has done a horrible job with me, huh? Wow, oh, my life crumbled after that. I passed 30 days later. Yeah, minimum number of questions and so forth. I was petrified going into that exam. As a matter of fact, our data shows that more than 80% of all of our grads pass within 2 attempts. And it gets to 100 if you continue engaging with us post-graduation, even if you're not successful on the first, second, whatever it is. Continue engaging, you'll get there. And you'll be an excellent nurse, because resiliency that you demonstrated to date would be like, wow. Yeah. So go for it. Don't let that stop you. But again, to sort of finish that thought, no, we have not done a good job as a profession to make sure that we're truly addressing all of the things that we must address. We're complacent. We are. We're great with patients. We're trusted, and yet we do not use that trust that exists in order to drive systemic changes. So today, it's all about that. Convincing you all, inviting you into that, and you figuring out what is it that I can do, because you're not powerless. You're absolutely not powerless. You can do a lot. You start small, and then you continue building your momentum. I wasn't, didn't roll out of mama's womb as an RN and a CEO and all of that. Had to build it, learn, continue learning. So I'll finish with this before the break. This is who pays for that $4.3 trillion that we discussed. Almost close to $1 trillion, 900 billion, is Medicare. They spend about 13.5 thousand on per enrollee in the Medicare program. Who does Medicare cover? The people 65 and older, right? They don't have access to other private insurance.
Or disabled.
And disabled, right. So people with for example, after 30-some months of having a chronic kidney disease, somebody gets access to Medicare, no matter what age they are. Some other disabilities and elderly population. Medicaid, $734 billion, 9,000 per enrollee. Whom does Medicaid cover? Low income. And we've discussed low income, right? Because of this lived experience, because of the level of income that people have, they do have more health issues. Because again, access to proper nutrition and on and on and on, all of those things that we talk about. So it does cost more. Private insurance, by far the largest, right, $1.2 trillion, but only 6,000 per enrollee, less than half of that of Medicare, and 30% more, 30% less, or 33% less than Medicaid. Who gets private insurance? Employed people, like people who work, right? And people who, like by definition, if you're working, and and have access to insurance, probably your income is probably all right, and you're probably middle class and so forth, and and then therefore, again, by definitionally, you have different lived experiences, and probably you have less sort of prevalence of any particular problems, right? And younger population, right, generally. And then out of pocket, so in addition to all of the insurances, we pay another $433 billion. So tell me this. Have you ever heard of car insurance that says, hey, bring me only those people who for sure will have accidents? Like anybody who drinks and then drives, I want them. Those are the only ones I'll be insuring. No, why not? It's insane. It would be absolutely insane, right? Like no insurance works if it only covers the highest risk populations, right? And yet in our system, when we last question, what do you think the biggest difference is between our healthcare system and that of the rest of that list that I showed you earlier? What is the biggest difference? System difference. Come on, tell me. It has to do with money.
I think it's because we have different levels of health, like how to get healthcare, like Medicare, we have all.
Right. We have all sorts of different ways for access to be had, as opposed to what?
As opposed to other countries that might just have like one or two, either being employed or.
Right. So everybody else has universal health care access. Universal, meaning for everybody. It's not necessarily, different countries are different. In the UK, it's the government that owns it all, right? For example, and yet again, we're like, oh, bad, government-owned healthcare, bad. Guess what? They spend less, they get better outcomes than we do. Ta-da. In some other countries, it's a single payor, which is the government, right? But the providers are private, and but again, everybody has access. And in a universal system, every single person pays into the system, and then every single person has access to the system. Yeah? So everybody pays. What happens in this country? We tried mandating it, right? The Obamacare and all of that. No, I'm young, I don't need it, screw you. Yay, I don't need it, why should I pay? Well, darlings, newsflash, if you're lucky, you will be old. And then you will need it. And imagine all the young people running around and saying, I don't need it, why should I pay? Think on that. Right? We're so short-sighted, and we don't think in systems ever as individuals. It is all about ourselves, our ego, me, 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 me. Here's me, here's my food. Insta, here I come. So risk pooling doesn't exist, and universal access doesn't exist in our coverage, because risk pooling, that's how car insurance works. They insure different people, right? Different risk profile people. And some of them, most of them, will never need anything in that particular year, right? Whereas some will, right? Will get in an accident, something will happen, and they will need some, repair or treatment or whatever it may be. Then the insurance pays. And that's how the system sustains itself. What we have is absolutely unsustainable. And yet we will march on the streets because some pundit on TV told us to do it, with the signs that read, "Government, hands off my Medicare." Newsflash, people, Medicare is government. And on that note, guess what? I'll give you 15 minutes of a break. Please be back at 5 after the hour in whichever time zone you are. All right, everybody, welcome back. Thank you for not escaping. Those of you in the cyberspace, thank you for sticking around and coming back. We're going to start with a few questions that came from the cyberspace and try answering those. And then, all right, Brianne.
So we're taking it back quite a while.
Okay.
Alicia she has said, is healthcare performance partially a cause of the FDA and what is allowed in a lot of our nutrition? So all the sugars and everything.
We just had that conversation, right? So and the question is healthcare. So the healthcare system performance is a bit different from actual, because the performance of the system affects the outcomes, but a lot of it certainly is outside of the healthcare system per se, as far as what affects the outcomes. And specifically in nutrition, right? Yes, you're right. The high fructose syrup and kind of processed corn things are in a lot of what we consume, and leads to all sorts of issues like type 2 diabetes and obesity and things like that. So I think, but the causes are multifaceted. It's a systemic cause that has nothing to do with healthcare, but there is this notion in this country that there's like this food pharma complex that exists, right? That essentially the food producers produce things that make us ill, and then pharmaceuticals then produce the pills to fix that, and then it just a continual cycle, because from the pharmaceuticals you get side effects and so on and so forth. Look, the problems are political problems, right? This is both nutritional or the food system and the pharmaceutical system have powerful political lobbies and put a lot of money into keeping things the way they are, right? So who doesn't have a political lobby that truly is as powerful as its membership is the profession of nursing. Because we do not look at ourselves as, oh, we're just nurses, we're just, working with patients, we're just fixing what comes to us and try to care for that, rather than, again, stepping more upstream and understanding that we do have power, it's just we do not organize, we're not organized to use it in a way that actually advocates for real change upstream into the other systems. And again, I talked about how many of us are in Congress or in governments or in local governments or on corporate boards or anything like that, right? I mean, until we take responsibility for all these systemic upstream changes, we're not going to move much further. But 4 million, there is nothing larger as far as a group of people is concerned in this country than the profession of nursing. And if only we use that leverage, if only we learn to use that power to drive changes, to get into FDA on the panels, to get, I mean, it is, but again, like, hey, right? I mean, it's not a joke. I always say, like, Schneider for Senate, because, like, what else would I do after this gig, right? But at the end of the day, I mean, this is not enough, right? And me talking to you and inviting you into this is to conveying you have to know your stuff, right? You have to base it on evidence, not on things that are not evidenced. But you have to use your voice. You have to use your power. You have to. And so my hope is that, yeah, we're going to drive this change and political change into it. All right, Brianne, what else we have?
Okay, there's another question from Laura, which says, how does this school combat the NCLEX first-time pass rate?
We don't combat it. We just said no to it. And then made sure that our accreditors and our regulatory environment that we operate in understand what we're after. But as I said, our presentation this week at the American Academy of Nursing is all about that, starting to educate. And look, I go around the country quite a bit and meet with politicians, right, with state-level politicians, because at the end of the day, those are the people that make nurse practice acts, right, that legislate nursing practice acts across this country. And nurse practice acts is what needs to change in order to allow other outcomes that are real outcomes to drive the system rather than the outcome that is not really, that has no evidence behind it and doesn't really support quality, right? So it's not whether you pass in the first attempt that's important. It's important as a new grad is whether or not you're prepared to practice in your first setting, not for the rest of your life, because you cannot learn absolutely everything, like nursing wide, right, in your schooling, but you have to be ready to practice. And so we're doing a lot of things to try to partner with, Stan is doing a lot of work with that. I'm doing a lot of work with that. Partner with healthcare system, with communities, with organizations, with specific populations, right? And to make sure that we make that connection between you as a learner and your future employer. And then, so we are essentially redefining this nursing education system and how it is done. Believing this, that if you're prepared for your first practice, for your first job, that's good for you. And you will be in that for, a couple of years, several years, right? And then if you want to do something else afterwards, the educational system should support you from there as well, right? Through continuing education, so specialty, micro-credentialing, and things like that. By the way, I'll give it a plug. In the spring, we're rolling out our continuing education division. It is called Evolve Ed, and it is going to have all sorts of goodies as far as continuing ed and getting specialty training in things like, for example, wound care or rural health or memory care or things like so. And as time moves on, it's going to be more and more and more and more. So it is not about passing the exam on the first attempt. You need to pass the exam, obviously, to practice as a nurse. But if you graduated, guess what? We know you can do it. All you have to do is continue, again, engaging with us if you weren't successful in the first attempt or the second and so forth. But we know you can do it. So now, do you know that, right? Do you believe that? That's another, having that confidence and belief in you, right? And not just based on some sort of empty kind of like, oh yeah, I feel like it. No. Should look at the evidence that is there. You've done all your concept maps, right? And they were evaluated, and it's all cool, right? And you passed the exams, and you progressed, and you did all that. Yeah, hey, yes. So you've hit the outcome. So as you hit these outcomes, let that be another testament to you that you're getting closer and closer and closer to being able to pass the exam. And the bigger question that you ask yourself, am I getting closer and closer and closer to actually being able to practice? That's a bigger thing. All right, Brianne, what else?
Okay, so the next one is kind of a three people, somewhat the
Yep.
same question.
Yep.
So I'm going to read them all, and then I'll let you answer them. Aaron said, from your experience, what advice would you give to nursing students aspiring to make meaningful changes in the U.S. healthcare system?
Yep.
Tracy said, is there something they can do now?
Yeah?
And then Kayleen said, what advice would you give to a nursing student with interest in politics but no experience?
Huh. Awesome questions. All right. I'm going to hold the answers to those till a little bit later, and I will come back to those answers to kind of give you, because we're going to brainstorm at exactly like what it is that you can do now, how you can gain some experience around things, and so forth. Melvis, you had something.
I think my question was
Oh, sort of like that, yeah. So let's finish kind of the baseline things. So this slide is about who sponsors healthcare, right? And the sponsorship means, so the first one, right? What's the difference between pay and sponsor? So pay is who signs the check, right? Sponsor is whose money is it, right? So look at there. Federal government, 34%, households, 27%, private business, 17, state and local government, 15, other private, which is foundations and things like that, 7%. How much of it actually taxpayers? Yeah, all of it. Except, you know, private business, yeah, they're you know, you can kind of say, okay, that's employers, right? But if you add federal government, state government, how does federal and state governments get by their money? Taxes, right? So add that, that's 49, add 27 that we pay out of pocket and premiums and co-pays and all of that, right? You're getting to over 60. Like, we probably donated to these other private foundations and things like that, or we already pay for all of it. Shouldn't we get a better outcome from this money, right? So again, and somehow we're all afraid that if a universal system that is more aligned was created, that somehow it can't be any more expensive than what we already put into it. As a matter of fact, I'll show you in a bit here of how it can be reduced. This is just where the dollars went. Hospital care, $1.32 trillion in 2021. $1.32 trillion in 2021. What do we do in acute care now, in hospital care? What do we treat there, for the most part? Ideas? Exacerbations of chronic illness. We've looked at what percent of the population has chronic conditions. These conditions are poorly managed or unmanaged at all throughout the population. Because guess what? Nurses are not taught and not expected, right, for a million of us. No, we're all going to be, you know, adjusting drips. It's a little too late and too expensive to be adjusting drips. We have to go upstream to managing these conditions more effectively in order for it not to end up in the most expensive care proposition there is. It's too late by the time something is in acute care. And most of what we treat in hospitals is preventable and avoidable. Ooh.
It's the national alert. It's a test. Everybody's going to get it, yeah.
National test, yay. Hopefully everybody's enjoying the sound.
Guess what? Non-Apple is delayed.
Oh. All right, okay. Well, now after that excitement, and what are we testing? The National Emergency System or something like that?
We had it turned off overrun.
Oh, wow. Well, good thing somebody knew about it, because nobody informed me. Anyway, all right. So everybody understands the problem with acute care, right? And then you look at the rest of it. Pharmaceuticals, close to $400 billion per year. Why? Is all of it like effective and useful? We're sure this is not for real, right?
Yeah, no, they announced
This is not like the last thing I'll be ever talking about. All right, everybody. Okay, hey.
There's a lot of bad conspiracy theories going around about this test.
Oh, really? Yay for us to, you know, be in the middle of the excitement, scheduling it. Like, our timing is awesome. Okay, so $400 billion. What is the difference between how do we become aware of pharmaceuticals in this country? I mean, obviously, you know, if you know, you're in a hospital and you prescribe something, okay, you may not be aware. What? Advertising, yay! You get a pill, and everybody gets a pill. Rather than putting the bagel aside, you know, or the donut. Go ahead, Holly, just eat the cake.
5 minutes later.
So, yes, and what advertising is constant. It actually is not allowed in the rest of those countries. Because what? We look at TV, right? And here she is, she's just twirling in the hills. She feels so wonderful and da-da-da-da-da. And it's all because, you know, enter the name of a drug. And then what? I mean, like, well, I have insurance. I want to twirl in the hills. I go to my doctor and it's like, and it's only, you know, $10 copay. And I'm like, I want that. And the doctor has exactly what, 35 seconds to spend with us? Because, you know, we saw the numbers. And guess what? To get rid of you, they're like, here you go. My mother is like that. Oh my God, Mom. It's like, if only you actually went outside and twirled a little bit, perhaps then you would need the, no, but I'm like, this, I know you love reading, but this is not going to make you feel any better in your joints or things like that. And then she's mad at her doctor because her doctor dares to say, you know what, dear, you have to lose some weight. She's, how dare she? She should look at herself. Which, you know, there's some truth in that, right? Too, right? Like, unless you model something, it is very difficult to convince somebody else that that's what they should be doing as well. So think about that in your practice, right? As you prepare for that, right? What can you do now? Like, start implementing some of these things that you're learning into your everyday life. Yay! All right, so there's other things on there. You can, we will send these slides out to everybody afterwards, so like you have access to this. This is the waste in the system. Waste. Money that is thrown away, that are absolutely ineffective, right? The estimates go up to almost $1 trillion per year, wasted, thrown away. Failure of care delivery. What is that? Failure of care delivery. That's when somebody already is in the system, and meaning had access, and we have failed to produce an outcome in the system. Nursing is a part of that, big time. Failure of care coordination. It's like my mom. If she doesn't have the right answer from her primary, she'll go to a specialist, because guess what? She only has a $25 copay. Like, do you have a different answer? My back is hurting, or whatever. And maybe. Physical therapy, you know, she gets prescribed physical therapy, and I asked her, I'm like, Mom, how's that? Well, I decided not to go until I get an MRI. I'm like, oh my word. You don't need an MRI. You do need some movement, that's all. Anyway, over-treatment. I talked about that. That's an example of drugs, right? Or unnecessary diagnostics, right? Pricing failure. Pricing failure. Think about this. You know Amazon? Everybody? Yeah? Ooh, yeah. Most everybody has Prime and everything. And it's like, and you will shop for an item, and you will buy it if it's 2 cents less from a different seller. Guess what? you will be buying it from that seller. We're really good in price comparison, you know, coupon cutting, do all of that in our lives, and like going and getting the best deal possible. But when it comes to consuming healthcare, nope. Because our copay is 25 bucks. It doesn't matter how much something costs. And the same procedure with the same quality outcome, the price difference can be staggering. Some time ago, I did need an MRI on my shoulder because I hurt my shoulder with a dye, an injection, and I did it for a little bit north of $400. Same procedure in other providers was more than $2,000. But again, if I only have to pay my copay and not my high deductible plan, which I have a very high deductible to meet, I was like, yeah, who cares? I'm not paying, somebody else is paying. Guess what? It's you. You are paying. So that, administrative complexity. We have myriad providers and myriad payors. Coordinating between all of that costs almost $300 billion per year. Just on that. Problem that universal systems do not have. Yeah. Anyway, as much as a quarter of our spend is wasted. All right, factors affecting poor health outcomes. We've talked about some of them already. Systemic inequities and generational poverty. Should we talk more about that, or everybody sure understands that a lot of this is systemic? Yeah? Social isolation, loneliness. Let me read to you this is a couple of studies as of just recently, from 2010 through 2021. Lacking social connection can increase the risk of premature death to levels comparable to smoking daily. Living in isolation reduces our chances of survival, and social isolation increases the risk of premature mortality by 29%. Poor social relationships, social isolation, and loneliness can increase your risk of heart disease by 29% and risk of stroke by 32%. Smaller social network size is associated with an increased risk of type 2 diabetes and other diabetic complications, including heart attacks and kidney disease. Among older adults, chronic loneliness and social isolation can increase the risk of developing dementia by approximately 50%. Being more socially connected can improve stress responses, minimize the negative health effects of stress. Social isolation, or even perception of social isolation, can increase inflammation in the body to the same degree as physical inactivity. Loneliness and poor social support have been found to significantly contribute to the development and severity of illnesses after exposure to viruses. Study after study after study after study. And yet, we love it. Climate change. Haven't touched on that one yet. Does that affect health? Sure, how? What do you think, Brittany?
I know when it's cold, people get sick easier.
When it's really, really hot? Heard of Texas or Arizona this year? Not just sick. People get very much dead from overexposure to heat outside. Now, a lot of our communities are not even equipped to deal with heat as of late. People don't have air conditioners, right? People live in areas that traditionally didn't require that. And yet now, that happens. How about them hurricanes and tornadoes and all of the fun stuff? Yes. The coastline, the flooding, things like that. And guess what? Those issues disproportionately affect people of lower incomes as well. So if I have higher income, I can move, right? And we haven't even started, so this is the new thing that National Academy of Medicine, and please go on their website and look it up. There's a lot of information there on how climate change is absolutely an inordinate factor in our inability to get health outcomes. And it has now American Nurses Association, National Academy of Medicine, National League for Nursing, I mean, all have statements on their websites on climate change and what it is that nurses should be doing in order to address the effects and in order to be prepared. Because some of it is, newsflash, too late. Not all of it is too late, but some of it is too late of the interventions that we could have done several decades ago. So now, as nurses, we have to be prepared to deal with it. In the next few decades, we'll have climate migration happening. People migrating away from the areas that have become unlivable. That will increase stress on other areas. And again, people of lower means will have even more of exacerbation of not being able to get to the wellness outcomes and health outcomes and all of this. So that's that. Gun violence. Talked about that already. Homicides, even bigger suicides. If somebody is not, again, feeling well emotionally today, something is going down, they're isolated, guess what? Do you know how easy it is to get a firearm right then? In most of this nation, very, very easy. And then, you know, walk out and say, you know what, I'm done. And yet we keep arguing, and nurses are like very quiet on the issue of whether or not there should be waiting periods for obtaining firearms. And evaluation of mental fitness then. Not historically, you've been well. Yeah, and we make it into a big political issue because guess what? There's a lot of money behind guns. Same as behind bad food. Same as behind pharmaceuticals. Inadequate health promotion. This is social factors now, right? Nobody knows, but it's so delicious. I love high fructose syrup. Everybody does. That's all our taste buds respond to. Fat, sugar, and salt. Yay! You put those three things in any combination, and it's We're like, yay! It's a biological, it's an evolutionary thing, right? We needed it in the past to like store calories because, you know, the next fat, like access to fat or sugar or something like that was far, far away. And we, you know, for days, maybe no fat, no sugar. And so we're like, We have plenty of access to all of this nowadays, and yet we behave like we're not getting it ever again. Because it's so delicious. It is, I love it. So delicious. I hate exercise. I hate it. Nevertheless, you know, dragging myself out of bed this morning, running a 5K along this beautiful river here.
You did not.
Yes, I did. Of course I did. Yes. And then doing some upper body strength thingies. Because, you know, doctors told me muscles are good for me. Just, you know, not like, obviously I'm not like Arnold. But nevertheless. So lack of exercise, poor nutrition, people are not aware, preventable and poorly managed chronic conditions. Most of chronic conditions are absolutely preventable. The number 2 cause of death from cancer, preventable cause of death in the United States. Guess what? Preventable, absolutely preventable. Number 1 is heart disease. Number 2, well, yeah. Colon cancer. Yep. Guess who dies from colon cancer more than anybody, any other group, population group? Men. Which men? Not really. It's younger and younger and younger. Black men. Yeah. Because, I don't trust that system, and nothing is coming around there. Now, how does colon cancer come about? Oh, these polyps start appearing, and normally connected to nutrition, to what we consume, right? Polyps, yeah. And if you go, you know, and a doctor like takes a scope and then snips those off, those polyps, guess what? They never develop into cancer. Yay, preventable, cheap. Do we go, even if we know that we should? Nope. Why do black men don't go and suffer from a lot from kind of exacerbations and death from preventable conditions? The what? Lack of diverse providers. And so therefore continued systemic lack of trust in the healthcare system. Guess what? If a provider is a black male, a nurse that is talking to that patient is a black male, that trust is there, right? And then they can convince somebody to actually go and do something that will save their life. And yet how many black men in nursing do we have? Yeah, less than anybody else. So it's connected, directly connected with the population. And all this, you look, being culturally aware, that's great. That's great. But you cannot, you know, learn as a white upper income valley girl of what it is like to be a black man that lives in poverty. Only somebody with that lived experience really can truly then understand and have access to that person, right? So that's connected. Reactive rather than proactive healthcare non-system, nothing systemic about it really. All the issues are systemic, but how we deal with them, they're not. So it is built post World War II. It's the system that we see now. And what problems were we experiencing right after World War II? What was the biggest problem, healthcare problem of all after the Second World War ended? Biggest. The what? No. This is after World War II, you know, 1945, about starting in 1946. Come on, what was like the biggest acute problem we had? Babies.
Baby boomer.
Yeah, huh? Heard of baby boomers? Yeah. Them old folk now? I know, nor mine. But yeah, you know, all the men were gone for a few years. Then they came back and everybody's like, yay! Let's do it. And they did it, and did it, and did it, and did it. to produce one of the largest generations that this country has ever seen. Yay! So baby boom happened. So all of these places were like built to deal with that. Plus, sort of people were way more active than now. Injuries, things like that, right? We didn't have OSHA safety standards in the workplace. Oops. So we had to treat a lot of that, right? Unlike now, where we treat mostly exacerbations of chronic conditions in the system that is built truly for acute conditions, right? So we don't have the right system design for the issues that we're experiencing today. We don't have it in the communities. And then, yeah, you know, I hear a lot about, from nurses, from learners, right? I used to do the new Learner Welcome Forum. And I would ask, you know, why? Like, what are you gonna do, right? It's like, oh, NICU, yay, preemies, I love preemies. It's like, okay, sure, yes, yay. Or, you know, again, our idea of what healthcare is comes from TV. Yeah, Grey's Anatomy ain't healthcare. I am amazed the city of Chicago still stands with like all of the fire and med and PD that happens there. It's like, oh my word, are there still people there? Because, you know, by my count, everybody should be dead by now, according to TV. So I don't know if anybody is from Chicago or Illinois on this broadcast, but hey, good for you surviving. Okay, so yeah, so our sort of how we look at it and what we decide to do as nurses is important. Where do we need nurses nowadays? Long-term care, right? Because remember baby boomers? We just talked about them. Mm-hmm. Yes, they're becoming older. And they need more care, and there's a lot of them. Yes, there's more them than NICU babies, for sure. For sure. What else? Where else do we need nurses? Based on everything that we talked about today. In the care system, where?
Emergency?
Not necessarily emergency. Hopefully, you know, I mean, again, we can limit emergencies. Community health, population health, chronic conditions management. I know it's not sexy. It's not like drip, 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 drip. Look at me. No, I know, it's kind of like, sort of boring, but very important. Need it. Again, without us individually changing shifting our paradigms, changing our views as to where we can be helpful, where we can be most useful in the current situation, right? Nothing is going to evolve. We're not going to seek out these opportunities. So you're asking, what can you do? Figure out where, based on everything that we discussed today, where is your skills and your talent and your passion and whatever, where it can be most useful in the care system that we have. So disengaged financial sponsors, employers, right? Nightingale, actually, one of the very few employers. We pay people, we pay them to like get healthier, for real. I mean, like they get like real cash money and premium breaks and things like that. Why do you think I get up and run 5K? So I can open the app and it'll like, points. That's right. Yes, so again, most employers just blindly sign the checks and those costs go up and up and up every year. You know that because you get passed on those costs, right, proportionately. And so so it's large payor that is absolutely disengaged from promoting anything that is better, at least within their workforce, right? There's examples of some employers that that have, corporate offices, or used to anyway, and cafeteria and things like that, and where simple switch of the price from the burger and fries, like, normally cheap, right? Like $5, whatever, I don't know. And then a salad with grilled chicken or whatnot would be like $9. And people would come in and was like, okay, yeah, $5 sounds better. So this is a big corporation, Safeway. They're a food corporation. So in their corporate offices, they did that. And this goes back over a decade ago, where they just flipped the prices. They put the grilled salad, so they weren't making as much money on margin on the fresh salad with grilled chicken. So that became $4 or $5, and then the burger and fries became cheaper. I mean, more expensive. And so then they saw people started eating better. People started taking that home. It's like, oh yeah, lettuce is not poison most of the time. E. coli, watch out. Watch out for E. coli, and that's back to our food system and things like that. But the people started kind of doing more healthy things at home, and their spending, what they spend on their healthcare because they're self-insured, went down because people became healthier. So that's what it's about. In order for us to change this unsustainable trajectories that we're on, of spending, of unsustainable outcomes, we have to go way upstream into and figure out how to do better nutrition, figure out how to do more movement, better figure out how not to be socially isolated. Yay, everybody at the screen. On and on and on and on and on and on, right, in order for this to change. And so access, we talked about that. It's expensive. It's expensive, and there's clinical shortages, provider shortages, nursing shortage. Ever heard of that one? Yeah. And it is going to become really, really, really bad unless we figure out how to produce way more nurses, enter Nightingale College and Nightingale Education Group, than what we've been producing, and convince others that their systems, already existing capacities, can produce more nurses. They just have to wash out less, right? But then for that, we need to change the NCLEX policy, and on and on and on. See how upstream, everything is upstream. Systems changing. And factors affecting high spending. We pay per services, not for performance in the system, meaning, right, the more I do as a provider, the more I get paid, whether it's needed, not needed, whether it's effective, not effective, rather than truly changing the system to where it pays for outcomes and not for the services performed. Overprescribing, we talked about that already. Unnecessary diagnostics, we talked about it already. Lack of care coordination, talked about it already. We're a very litigious society. Administrative costs, we've addressed that. Lack of focus on health promotion, prevention of diseases, and effective chronic conditions management. Shortages, and then consumers that are overly optimistic. You know how all the smokers buy the cigarettes, right? And it's the like horrible long picture or whatever it is, or like a trach, somebody like on the thing. And they're like, they look at it and they're, oh yeah, not me. That's her. That's not gonna happen to me. Yes, it will. Maybe not exactly that thing, but something. And kids nowadays, with like, because there's no scary pictures on that yet. Oh, and it tastes like peach. And it's like, Game of Thrones dragons, like going, clouds billowing out. It's like, oh, delicious, delicious. You just wait and what that delicious is gonna turn into, right? Yep. Lack of effective health education, and we sit on our butts all the time. Just look at this room. I'm sorry, I made you do it. I know. Bad Mikhail. Bad Mikhail. All right, so what can you do? We're coming back to those questions. What can you do, or what will you do? And when you have ideas, and if you have ideas, throw them into the chat if you're over there. And we'll wait a bit to hear from folks there. So I'm turning the question back to you. I've sort of given you a little bit of kind of, suggestion, I think, as to how to approach your practice, right? And to make sure that your skills, your talent is used in the at the best, utmost capacity for the current state of the system. But what else? What else? What else do you think? Janelle, how about? What do you think?
Volunteer your time, share your skills with people.
Okay, so volunteering time, sharing skills with people. Volunteering where, for example?
Any kind of organization that helps people.
So organizations that help people, right? But utilizing your skill, right? So humanitarian kind of and health causes perhaps, but utilizing your skills in a specific way, right? Because again, you becoming a nurse, right? That trust sort of goes with the profession, right? So you could use that trust to educate other people and the population that you work with, right? They come about and you talk to them. You say, hey, this is what I know, right? Like, let's chat about it. Let's see how, perhaps, I'll give you one example, right? So one of the things that, and this comes from, I don't remember where in Southern California, and it was a school district there, kind of elementary school, a couple of elementary schools, and Kaiser Permanente, which is a big kind of healthcare provider and insurer. So they act in a way, right, that they're very interested in promoting health and preventing disease and managing chronic conditions effectively because they pay for it all, right? And so if the better job they do on the front end and not preventing something from happening, the better off the organization is financially. It's a nonprofit, but still, it does that. And so some years ago, and they published this, they went, and in collaboration with this couple of elementary schools, they introduced edamame. You know edamame? So it's a bean that is pretty cheap to buy in the frozen section. And so they started kind of introducing kids, elementary school kids, to edamame. And kids were like skeptical at first because it looked nothing like their fries. But they sort of eat it. And this was predominantly Hispanic population in that school. And so, and kids figured out that, ooh, it's not poison, and it actually is like pretty good, and it's very, very nutritious, right? A lot of nutritional value, energy kind of is up, but not like sugar kind of energy, but actually focused on all of this. And so then the kids started, going home like kids do, and talking about their day, talking about edamame, and parents would be like, Eda, which language is this, dear? And like edamame, and so, and again, and then they started serving the families, and families started introducing edamame as a protein, very high nutritious protein, into their diets, figuring out that it was actually cheaper than the stuff that they were buying before. So it is, right, like working with the organizations and working with kids, volunteering, right, and really it's important to work with kids. Because kids are impressionable, right? And kids don't have like preconceived notions about things. They do not watch either CNN or Fox or any of it. So it's easier to talk to them about things and convince them that something actually could be good for them, right? And so anyway, so yay, that's a good. What else? Do we have like some ideas there on what people think they could do? Right, so, and education, right. So it is your job from here until the end of your career is learning. You have to continually learn to stay relevant in your skills, to understand what you deal with, right? And again, learning from sources that are reputable, rather than anybody who says anything on the internet. my brother believes some things I tell you that the internet told him. And I was like, oh my word, dude, that is not correct. Here's the actual evidence. So again, yes, learning. In order, and I'm going to go back to that political question, right? You can, I mean, certainly you have to be able to speak publicly. This guy, introvert, right? It is very, it drains a lot of energy for me to be in front of people and talking with people and meeting new people and doing all of that, and yet I constantly do it. I learned how to train myself to do that, right? Because in order to have impact, you have to be in front of people. You have to be able to deliver messages that, again, that are learned from evidence. And then, so you start there. You know your stuff. You train for sort of connecting, networking, and public speaking. And and then you start talking to people and convincing people that they should be listening, right? And again, we already have a leg up because anytime I walk into any room and I say, I am a registered nurse, guess what? It's like right away, people are like, okay, I'm listening. Sure, yes. So that is important, and we should be able to use that. And then look, starting, you can get involved in community causes, right? Like at the community level, and local sort of governments. You can get involved with local health departments, right? Because this is where it starts. It starts locally. It starts grassroots, and then you build it from there. Yay! Perhaps you decide to found and figure out how to operate a school. Fantastic. Good for you. Come to me, we'll talk. And then perhaps I'll give you a few pointers on how to get that going. But there is a lot. There is a lot that you individually can do. Joining associations now, right? There's a nursing student association, the National Student Nurses Association, which is, I think Nightingale has a chapter that you can join. If you are performing solidly in your education, at a certain point within your BSN program, you can join Sigma, which is an international nursing society, excellent society, and there's a lot of things that you can both learn from there and contribute to the work of Sigma. There is American Nurses Association. Every state has a state-level nurses association, and so on. And driving this right after you join the associations, only being a member isn't enough. You have to show up at the meetings. You have to run for committees and leadership positions to be able to have a platform then to deliver the message that you would like to deliver. So, and it's not, it doesn't come around magically or miraculously. You absolutely have to work on it. Anything else out there in the cyberspace?
No, that's it.
Everybody is like,
There is quite a few people that said they'd vote for you if you become president.
yay, Senate is all I can hope for. That's the best, nobody will, I wasn't born here, so that's about the highest office that I can have. However, thank you for your confidence, and yay, Schneider for Senate. And look, I'll leave you with this, right? The reason the reason this exists, this school exists, this workshop exists, because I believe that we can do better. I believe that I can do better, and I believe that I'm not powerless. It is in my power to do it, right? To drive it forward. And the vision that we have in this organization of better health and better humanity for a better world, it is hopefully it becoming your vision, right? hopefully as a learner here, you kind of jump into that and say, you know what? Yes, I can. I can do it, and it's a lot of work, and it's tiring, Melvis, and you're absolutely right, and you have to know a lot of stuff, and you have to constantly learn, and it's exhausting. You have to, like if you meet this week, you have to take so many trains, a lot of trains. But if you all do it, if every single grad that this organization produces actually commits today at the FON, this workshop, commits to driving this better forward, to carrying the flame forward that was lit long time ago, of education, of health, of wellness, of care, of compassion, and all of that, I truly believe that future is bright, no matter what else is happening. And we collectively can absolutely change the course of history in this country, around the globe. And so the invitation is open to all of you. Thank you, three, for being so close to the invitation, physically present. And look, I hope to see you at that walk across the stage whenever that happens for you. And I thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for participating in the cyberspace, and flame forward. That's all for me. Thank you.